Warning: the ocean's depths are hiding more than we ever imagined. Fishermen are hauling in bizarre creatures and mysterious objects that defy explanation, and the footage they've captured will send chills down your spine. Prepare to witness the most shocking discoveries from the deep, revealing a world far stranger and more terrifying than we ever knew.
Tam Cha is the deepest blue hole in the entire world. Tam Cha means deep water in the Mayan language. It's located in Chetumal Bay off the southeastern coast of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico. Recently, scientists discovered that this blue hole is much deeper than they previously thought, reaching a depth of 1,380 feet. Initially, the depth of Tam Cha was estimated to be around 900 feet, but that was with echo sounder mapping, a technique that uses sound waves to measure the distance to the ocean floor. It only gives a rough estimate of depth though. But more recently, researchers used what's called a CTD profiler. This instrument has sensors that measure water conductivity, temperature, and pressure. They lowered it into the blue hole on a cable to gather precise data, and the new measurements revealed just how deep this blue hole really is. And scientists are now pretty excited about what could be lurking down there. But Tam Cha isn't the only deep, dark, and dangerous blue hole in the world. Far from it. There are blue holes all over the ocean whose depths are even more mysterious than this one. Before the discovery of Tam Cha, the deepest blue hole in the world was thought to be the Dragon Hole in the South China Sea. The Dragon Hole, also known as the Eye of the South China Sea, is a pretty remarkable underwater sinkhole in the Paracel Islands. It reaches a depth of about 987 feet. This blue hole gets its name from local legends that speak of a dragon residing in its depths, which I really wish was true. Dragons are probably at the top of my list of mythical creatures that I just wish existed. Scientists have been intrigued by the Dragon Hole for decades. After it had first been discovered by local fishermen, researchers used a VideoRay Pro 4 to explore it, which is a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV. And during these early explorations of the blue hole, they found over 20 previously undiscovered species of sea life. Next, we have the Black Hole of Andros. The Black Hole of Andros is an underwater sinkhole in the Bahamas. The hole is about 300 feet deep, so not as deep as most of the other holes on this list, but that's not what makes it so interesting. There's a drastic change in conditions as you go deeper here. Near the surface, the water is your typical clear, warm water of the Bahamas, but as you descend, there's a layer around 60 feet down that's completely devoid of oxygen and rich in hydrogen sulfide. This layer creates this kind of pinkish purple hue in the water. What's fascinating about this layer is that it mimics conditions believed to be similar to those of ancient Earth around 3.5 billion years ago. In this layer, scientists have found unique life forms that can actually survive without oxygen, so it makes for a pretty interesting place to study because it could help scientists understand more about early life on Earth. Probably goes without saying though that diving in the Black Hole of South Andros is very dangerous and strictly prohibited. But the Black Hole of Andros isn't the most dangerous blue hole in the world. That title goes to the Blue Hole of Dahab, aka the Red Sea Blue Hole in Egypt. There are more diving fatalities here than in any other diving site in the world. Between 1997 and 2012, there were an estimated 200 deaths at this diving site, and a lot of the danger here has to do with what's called the Arch, an 85-foot long submerged tunnel that's about 170 feet deep. The tunnel is really challenging and downright dangerous for less experienced divers. A big part of it comes down to breathing gas management. Any error along this tunnel and you can throw off the whole dive, and that can spell death. You may end up not having enough air to account for decompression stops on the way out and just run out of breathable air, which is terrifying. There's also a current that flows inward through the arch, which adds extra resistance, meaning some divers have just underestimated how long it actually takes to swim. The Red Sea Blue Hole is also rather infamous for the death of Yuri Lipsky, a Russian diving instructor who was carrying a camera on him at the time, so his last moments were caught on camera. It's an incredibly distressing video. I've watched it before, I've talked about it on the channel before at some point. But the video has also been used to help educate other divers, pointing out what he did wrong and how to avoid encountering a similar fate. Next, we head to the Czech Republic to see the deepest underwater cave in the entire world. It's really quite mind-blowing. A huge, deep hole filled with water going down way farther than you can see. The latest confirmed deepest depth in 2022 was measured to be 1,704 feet deep, but they believe it might be even deeper than that. The bottom still hasn't been reached, so who knows how far down it really goes, but it's estimated the abyss may be as deep as 2,600 to 3,900 feet. The cave is in a place called the Hranes Karst, an area known for its unique limestone formations. Water has slowly dissolved the limestone over millions of years, creating this incredibly deep abyss. Once again, we head back to the Bahamas with the Sawmill Sink. This blue hole is known for its huge collection of fossils. It's packed with history. Over the years, divers have discovered an amazing array of fossils and artifacts that have helped them piece together what the region was like before the arrival of humans, which is really cool. They pulled up bones of extinct animals like the Bohemian tortoise and crocodile, which roamed the islands thousands of years ago. One of the reasons these discoveries are so well preserved is because of the unique environment inside this sinkhole. The water is layered with fresh water on top and salt water below. This layering creates this oxygen poor zone in the middle, which helps prevent decay and keeps things in fairly good condition. Besides animal bones, divers have also found ancient human remains and artifacts. Human remains definitely less fascinating than extinct animals to a scientist, but also a lot creepier. And it's back to the Bahamas with Dean's Blue Hole. This one plunges to a depth of around 663 feet. From above, it looks like a beautiful, deep blue circle surrounded by lighter turquoise waters. Pretty breathtaking, just like pretty much any blue hole. They all kind of look like that, but this is a popular freediving spot. Some of the world's best freedivers come here to test their limits and break records, but this kind of diving is not without its risks. One of the main dangers of Dean's Blue Hole is its depth. The deeper you go, the higher the pressure becomes, which can affect your body in serious ways. Divers can experience something called nitrogen narcosis, which is kind of like being intoxicated underwater. It makes you confused and disoriented. This is partly what led to the death of Yuri Lipsky, who we talked about earlier. Another risk is shallow water blackout, which happens when a diver loses consciousness during the ascent. Due to a lack of oxygen, this can be deadly if the diver isn't rescued quickly. And yes, these are dangers you'll run into at pretty much every diving site, but this is one of the most famous blue holes in the Bahamas, and a lot of people flock here not knowing the full extent of the risks. The Great Blue Hole off the coast of Belize is a massive marine sinkhole over 300 meters across and 124 meters deep. This is probably one of the most famous blue holes in the entire world. Now, as for what's down there, it's never been fully mapped, but there have been a handful of expeditions, some successful, some unsuccessful. In 1971, a team of highly experienced divers collected stalactites from the blue hole and found that they had originally formed above ground, so they became submerged over time. In 2018, there was an expedition to map the cave systems of the blue hole. The scariest thing they found were the remains of 2 divers, 2 out of 3 that had gone missing while exploring years before. The Great Blue Hole is a bit of a tourist destination, at least for experienced scuba divers, but it can also be very dangerous. Next up, we have the mysterious Polynya. So not a blue hole, but in 2016, scientists discovered, or rather rediscovered, a massive hole in Antarctica. This wasn't the first time the hole was observed either, it had kind of just reappeared. The hole is what is known as a Polynya, which are areas of open water or very thin ice, completely surrounded by thick pack ice. They're still a bit of a mystery. But this Polynya in the Weddell Sea is extra strange. See, most of these holes form close to the shore, but this one is way out there. It was first discovered in 1974, but by 1976 it had completely closed up. Cut to 40 years later though, and once again the hole opened up and it's been continuing to grow. It's now larger than the entire state of Maryland. Why did it reappear? Scientists aren't sure. They're just collecting as much data as they can. They're assuming it'll continue to grow too. It's still not as large as it was in the 70s, but will it grow larger than it was back then, or will it close up again? We just gotta wait and see. Finally, we have the discovery of ancient DNA deep in the Scotia Sea. In 2019, a team from the International Ocean Discovery Program accidentally stumbled on something really cool. In the Scotia Sea, north of mainland Antarctica, the team discovered ancient DNA samples from microorganisms 584 feet beneath the sea floor. They studied these genetic samples, looking at damage patterns in the DNA to figure out just how old they were and how old was this DNA. Well, about 1 million years old. It's the oldest DNA ever discovered from seafloor sediments to date. Up until the point of this discovery, the oldest sedimentary ancient DNA ever discovered was about 650,000 years old. It's kind of hard to believe that DNA could be studied after sitting at the bottom of the sea for 1 million years, but it was actually surprisingly well preserved. Antarctica's low temperatures play a big role in this. The sun doesn't really reach all the way down there either, so the samples hadn't been affected by UV radiation. Now, the big question on everyone's mind is, what species did this DNA hail from? Well, they're still not sure, but they were able to figure out that it didn't come from a virus or bacteria. That would have been a bit of a letdown. No, this was DNA belonging to either a plant or, even more exciting, an animal.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the TikTok shark. In May of last year, someone on TikTok called Alex Albrecht, who is a marine biodiversity student as well as a musician, shared a video on the app that had people seriously shocked. The TikTok shows a massive shark lurking around the ship that Alex was on, which is said to have just been off of the coast of Massachusetts at the time. The ship was full of research students when this massive shark made its appearance, many of which either screamed or had some sort of expletive to say in response. Another TikTok user asked in the comments if the shark in the video is a megalodon, considering how absolutely huge this thing was. Was this an actual megalodon? Likely not, but hey, I'm not the marine life student here, so who am I to say? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Cray fisherman. David Stead is an Australian naturalist, and in his book titled Sharks and Rays of the Australian Seas, he details an encounter with a shark that some have taken to believe is the legendary Megalodon herself. Apparently, this incident happened in 1981 to a group of Cray fishermen that David spoke with. These fishermen were absolutely terrified of a shark they saw in their fishing grounds, which were just off of Broughton Island. They were so scared, in fact, that they refused to return to the fishing spot for days. All the men agreed that the shark was monstrous and that it was most definitely a shark, not a whale. The men explained that they had never seen a shark of that size before, and considering how they were all seasoned fishermen who had all had their fair share of encounters with sharks, whales, and all of the terrifying things that the ocean has to offer, how frightened they were really did leave quite the impression. In our number 8 spot today, we have 2 specimens. This story comes from all the way back in 1869 when an Irish scientist headed out on an expedition to Seychelles. It is said that he went there to study fish, but man, he was not prepared for the specimens he would go on to study. It is said that he found one that was over 15 meters, which is already a whopping almost 50 feet, but the other one really took the cake. The second specimen it is said that he found was alleged to have been 23 meters long, which is a massive 75 feet. Since this was so long ago, there wasn't any official documentation of it, but if there had been, the second one would hold the record for being the largest ever recorded. That is absolutely wild. Seeing it is one thing, but imagine being able to actually study it. In our number 7 spot today, we have the sailors. This gigantic shark sighting is said to have taken place in the 1960s just off of the edge of Australia's Great Barrier Reef. According to author B.C. Cartmel in his book Let's Go Fossil Shark Tooth Hunting, the sailors involved in this sighting initially refused to talk about it because of the fear of being teased for being afraid of what they had seen. After some time, however, they began to speak about the incident. They explained that while on board their 85-foot ship, they needed to weigh anchor in order to conduct some engine repairs. While this was ongoing, the crew became absolutely shocked when they saw the biggest shark they had ever seen slowly swimming past their completely stuck ship. Just like the last one, all the men agreed that they were not mistaking a whale and that it was indeed a shark. They also said that this shark was so large it was rivaling the boat in size. That is absolutely massive. Whether it really was a megalodon or not, whatever shark they saw that day certainly wasn't the average size. In our number 6 spot today we have the battle scar. This story is a little different than the others on today's list, and it started with the sighting of a great white shark. This 15-foot long shark was spotted swimming just off of Isla Guadalupe in Mexico, but what was so striking about this great white in particular was the absolutely savage wound it had on its side. This huge bite mark had people speculating as to what in the world could have caused it. I mean, there aren't very many predators to great whites, so it's a pretty rare occasion to see such a huge bite mark right on the side of one, and people were doubting whether or not another shark would have done this to one of its own species. There definitely are reasons for why this could have been an attack from another shark, but of course people took this as a possible sign that maybe there's something bigger lurking in the waters. If the megalodon somehow isn't actually extinct and just manages to evade any sort of confirmation of its existence, it certainly would need a ton of food to survive, which makes big fish like great whites a perfect snack. The megalodon is, however, one of the most powerful predators to have ever lived on our planet, so if this bite really was from a megalodon, it's surprising that this great white made it out alive. In our number 5 spot today we have a world record. Basking sharks are known for being one of the largest fish in the ocean, and that is exactly why the largest one ever recorded was definitely something to write home about. In 1851, in the Bay of Fundy, which sits between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia here in Canada, a basking shark was caught in a herring net. This shark was measured to be at least 40 feet long, which is astoundingly large, and it certainly confused those who had caught it at first. I can imagine that they likely also thought that they had some kind of living fossil caught up in their net, but nope, instead they just set a new world record. In our number 4 spot today we have the Demon. There are many stories and alleged sightings of what is now referred to as the quote Black Demon of Cortez, which is said to be a massive black shark seen off of Mexico's Baja coast. One story in particular regarding this elusive shark comes from a fisherman named Eric Mack. He had reported that one day while sailing he felt his boat begin to rock, which immediately gave him the feeling that something was awry. Eric was even further startled when he explained that he saw a massive towering tail sticking at least 5 feet out of the water. The stories of this shark are so infamous that it was even the focus of an episode of a History Channel show called Monster Quest. Maybe if there's a part 2 of this video we'll talk about some more of the sightings surrounding the Demon. In our number 3 spot today we have Deep Blue. This shark is in fact not a megalodon, but it definitely is a more modern contender. Deep Blue is the name of a great white shark who is most definitely one of the greatest ever recorded, at least in our lifetime. This colossal monster is the largest great white shark ever caught on camera by scientists. She is measured to be 20 feet long, 8 feet high, and about 2.5 tons, and while this isn't all that huge compared to her massive prehistoric cousin, it certainly is no small feat. Rumors of her existence have been spread since as far back as the 1990s, but it wasn't until 2014 that she was officially caught on camera and documented. Researchers at the time were in the midst of studying tiger sharks, but she made her grand appearance after scavenging some food from a sperm whale carcass nearby. In our number 2 spot today we have Bigger Than the Boat. Zane Grey is a man who is a novelist, and he is definitely best known for his adventure novels, but it is also said that he was a deep sea angler, and it was during one of his fishing adventures that his megalodon sighting came. In the novel, which is titled Megalodon, Fact or Fiction, writer Rick Emmer speaks of this incident, saying that Zane claimed to have seen, quote, one of the man-eating monsters of the South Pacific. It is said that whatever kind of shark he saw, it was a shark that was much longer than his boat, which was somewhere from 30 to 40 feet. He also said that this shark was yellow and green, and that it had a few white spots. Most notably, however, he said that the shark had a massive square head, and that it had, quote, immense pectoral fins. This is all to say that whether he saw a megalodon or not, whatever he saw was not just a harmless great white shark. What do you guys think? Perhaps a megalodon sighting, or just one of the tall, exciting tales told by Mr. Gray. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Mariana Trench sighting. A few years ago, a video began circulating the internet and it shows a gigantic shark scouring the seafloor. People online quickly put a story to the video saying that allegedly this is a megalodon that was caught on camera at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The creature is seen swimming over top of what is apparently an abandoned shark cage, and the video seems to be enough to have convinced many people. The video certainly is compelling, and whatever we see is most definitely terrifying to look at, but with my very limited knowledge of anything that lives in the sea, it's tough to say anything further. While some people swear that this is solid proof, others have brought up sharks that may have a similar appearance to the one seen in the—
Diving right into number 10, a gigantic eye. This humongous eye requires 2 hands to hold it. If we put this human eye next to the behemoth, it will just look like a tiny speck of dust. The giant eyeball washed up on the shores of Papana Beach in Florida, where someone picked it up and sent it over to the Wildlife Conservation Commission to be analyzed. If I saw a huge ass bloody eye washed up on shore, I'm pretty sure my instincts wouldn't tell me to pick it up and ship it out. I would probably pack up my lunch, grab my umbrella, and make a beeline to my car and pretend like this whole thing never happened. So once the scientists analyzed this gigantic eye, they thought that it came from a swordfish or a deep water fish. But I'm thinking that there's an undiscovered massive creature lurking the ocean floor with one eye who is waiting to be discovered. And now at number 9, we have the Bermuda Triangle. No water list could be complete without mentioning the infamous Bermuda Triangle. This remains as one of Earth's greatest mysteries. It is located in the Atlantic Ocean between Bermuda, Puerto Rico, and Florida. A ton of airplanes and boats have vanished in this area, and no one knows what happened. It's one of the biggest mysteries. Some speculate that bad weather or human error are the culprits, but other people theorize that the area is cursed or aliens could be involved. I'm not sure about that one, but more than 1,000 ships and planes have disappeared in the triangle, so maybe it's plausible. But this doesn't stop some cruise ships from sailing into these waters. Would you guys be brave enough to sail or fly over the Bermuda Triangle? Me, there's no way. Next up, number 8, we have a blobface. Someone called Guinness Book of World Records because I think I found the ugliest underwater creature in the history of ugly. He looks like his family just left him and he's going through a messy divorce. I kind of just want to give him a big hug and tell him that everything is going to be alright. Well, things are about to go from bad to worse for him because his species is in risk of becoming extinct. Fishermen in Southeast Australia are overfishing in this area, and as a result of that, the blobfish are very vulnerable to become extinct. Now that I've seen his squishy face, I can't imagine a world without the blobfish. I hope that we can stop overfishing and start conservation measures for these little guys. And who knows, maybe his frown will turn into a smile. The vampire squid bites onto this list at number 7. This thing looks like he came straight from hell. Judging by his appearance and name, I would expect that the vampire squid is a fearsome predator who terrorizes other animals in the ocean. But luckily for him, he just looks terrifying. The vampire squid collect and eat drifting particles, and they like to stay in the dark, low oxygen water with only a few predators. But they have the ability to turn themselves inside out. I don't know about you guys, but that kind of freaks me out. I mean, why is he able to turn inside out? Slithering into number 6, we're talking about the fang-toothed snake eel. This creature looks like he was ripped straight out of my worst nightmares. After seeing this picture, I'm done with the ocean forever. Okay, no, seriously, it doesn't get much worse than this. The fang-toothed snake eel dwells at a depth of 30 to 90 meters, which is roughly about 100 to 300 feet, and males can reach lengths of 33 inches. They also enjoy eating bony fish and crustaceans. One of these creatures was found washed up on the shore in Texas after Hurricane Harvey hit, and that was back in 2017. So who knows how many more of these terrifying creatures are still out there. But you know what? I'm not willing to find out. The colossal squid swims onto this list at number 5. The colossal squid lives in the depth sea surrounding Antarctica, and it is the largest invertebrate on Earth. Keep this in mind because the squid measures in at 46 feet long and weighs in at least 1,100 pounds. Their tentacles are covered with suckers, and they have extremely large hooks, which makes them really good at capturing and fighting off prey.
Colossal squid, the biggest squid on the planet.
She's hanging on to the gaff there. Oh, watch that mouth, eat you alive, that one.
There are even reports of sperm whales being injured and scarred from the colossal squid, so these guys actually get into fights with sperm whales. Is this real life right now? I don't even want to know what the colossal squid is capable of doing to a human. Ancient skeletons crash onto our list at number 4. At the bottom of Lake Rupkund in India, there are hundreds of ancient skeletons that are believed to be about 1200 years old. They were discovered in 1942, but their origins are unknown, and the location where they were found is so remote and far from any human settlement areas, so no one knows how this underwater graveyard came to be. People are theorizing that these skeletons are soldiers who were on a mass suicide mission, or that they're victims of a natural disaster. But I don't think we will ever find out what actually happened here. And now biting into number 3, we have the goblin shark. This thing looks like he clawed his way out of the depths of hell, and now he's lurking at the bottom of our oceans. Someone needs to send him back to where he came from. Just look at his slimy skin and little pointy sharp teeth and pointy head. Okay, damn, Mother Nature, you're creepy as hell. Okay, in this next clip, pay attention to how his jaws come out to bite his prey.
Diver had his own ominous run-in with a goblin shark.
I'm not usually scared of sharks, but this goblin shark is scary as hell. A bag of human hands brings us to number 2. A man was fishing in Siberia when he reeled in a bag that contained 54 severed human hands. He must have been really disappointed because he probably thought that he was reeling in the biggest fish of his life. This has to be one of the creepiest things that anyone has ever caught. The fisherman took the bag of hands to the local police, but they weren't overly concerned. And that's because they were actually able to trace them back to a local forensics laboratory who were found guilty of disposing the body parts improperly. Yeah, improperly is totally an understatement there. Okay, what the heck? How do you just take a bag of severed hands and it's like, how do we dispose of them properly? Let's just toss them in the water. No one will ever find them. I mean, what kind of lab is that? And I'm pretty sure that's highly illegal and they should be shut down like ASAP. The frilled shark bites his way onto this list at number 1. Here we have another creepy animal from the deep sea. The thing looks like a hellish hybrid of like a snake and a shark. The frilled shark has 25 rows of teeth, but they like to attack their prey like snakes, so they wrap around their prey and swallow them whole. All of those 300 teeth are used to trap the animals and make it impossible for the prey to break loose. Well, luckily for us, they live at depths of 50 to 200 meters, so we don't really have anything to fear. But deep sea divers definitely do not want to cross paths with this beast.
Victims don't stand a chance.
They can distend their mouths open and eat things that are more than half their body length.
Starting off this countdown, we have the disappearing Air Force jet. Over the years, a number of military officials have disappeared while exploring UFOs. Take this case, for example. On November 23, 1953, the U.S. Air Defense Command noticed a blip on their radar in a restricted airspace over Lake Superior. Since it was in restricted space, an Air Force jet took off to investigate. There were 2 crew members on board. The men never returned home from the mission. So while out investigating the blip, they got right to the spot where it should be. On the radar, it showed that they were right on top of this blip, but they couldn't see a craft anywhere. Then ground control saw the blip veer off and vanish, as did the men inside of the jet. The United States Air Force, US Coast Guard, and Canadian Air Forces all conducted an extensive search and rescue to try and find the men, but this was sadly unsuccessful. In fact, they didn't even find signs of wreckage. To this day, no one knows what happened to the mysterious UFO, the men, or their jet. Moving on at number 9, we have the Tehran UFO. In the early hours on September 19th, 1976, a shiny object was reported hovering in the skies above Tehran by at least 4 different people. As a result, 2 Imperial Iranian Air Force F-4 Phantom II jets set off to explore this mystery object. However, while nearing this object, their craft began to fail. They were going to open fire on it, but their weapons system was down. Not only that, but officers described the light as, and I quote, flashing with intense red, green, orange, and blue lights, so bright that I was not able to see its body. What's weird is that as soon as their jets moved away from the craft, their systems returned to normal. He then watched the craft, and I quote, slow down and land gently on the ground, radiating a high, bright light. The next day, they explored the area where the craft landed, and a number of residents said that they heard a loud noise and a bright flash of light during the night. In our 8th spot, we have the 6 soldiers. This next UFO encounter took place in North Korea in 1951 during the Korean War and impacted a number of Korean soldiers. So in May of 1951, Korean soldiers were preparing to bomb a nearby village when they were greeted by a strange craft. According to the men, the craft emitted some form of a ray that made their airburst start to explode. One man then said that they were attacked by some ray that was emitting pulses. Like a lighthouse light, you could see when it was aimed directly at you and when it wasn't. Well, after this weird attack, the men were left sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Some say that they were attacked by a UFO. Others say that they were attacked by some sort of death ray. To this day, we still don't know what attacked them and what caused them to fall so ill. Moving on at number 7, we have Skinwalker Ranch. Now this place has been known to be filled with supernatural activity. Not only do evil shape-shifting entities roam the land, but apparently aliens and UFOs do too. According to the original owner, Terry Sherman, him and his wife had a number of chilling experiences there. This ultimately led to them selling his plot of land. For starters, in June of 1996, mysterious crop circles kept appearing. Then, on a number of occasions, they saw UFOs hovering around their property. The worst is when they kept finding their cattle completely mutilated. This was not done by an animal, as it was done without bloodshed, and the cuts were very precise. For years, the government and military have been exploring Skinwalker Ranch to try and make sense of this situation. But they haven't, honestly. In our 6th spot, we have Falcon Lake. This incident has been named one of the most famous Canadian UFO encounters. It all started on May 20th, 1967, when 2 glowing objects descended from the sky near Falcon Lake in Manitoba. This was witnessed by a man named Stefan Michalak. Apparently, one of the weird crafts landed close to him, so he decided to investigate, like a dummy, which was a terrible idea. When he got close to it, it suddenly shot back into the sky. The beam of light from the craft as it took off set Stefan's clothes on fire. He was left with a bunch of strange burns on his body, including burn marks on his chest and a pattern of dots. Following the encounter, he fell ill. Now, some people believe the story to be a hoax, but he literally has burn marks on his body and scorched clothes as proof. So it makes you think otherwise. You're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the 2 fishermen. On October 11th, 1973, 2 friends, Calvin Parker and Charles Hickson, decided to go out fishing on a river in Mississippi. That's when a big bright light came out of nowhere. Parker reported, and I quote, "It was a blinding light. It was hard to tell with the light so bright, but it looked like it was shaped like a football. I would say, just estimating, that it was about 80 foot. It made very little sound, and it was just a hissing noise." But it gets weirder. He then claims that 3 legless creatures came out of the vessel and towards the 2. They described them as having mitten-shaped claws. One was necklace and gray, the other was more feminine. The friends started to freak out, and that's when these creatures wrapped their hands around their neck. Upon doing so, they calmed down. Parker thinks that they were ejected with something, and that's why they immediately calmed down. After that, he claims that they went on board the vessel and were experimented on. When they got out of there, they alerted the police, who alerted the military. In fact, the 2 men were interrogated a number of times because of how wild their story was. Moving on to number 4, we have the mutilated sergeant. This story is one that genuinely freaks me out. So back in 1956, an American Air Force Sergeant, Jonathan P. Lovett, and Major William Cunningham were out collecting the debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico. While doing so, the 2 separated and decided to go their own ways. After a while, Major William heard his sergeant let out a loud scream. As he rushed towards him, he saw the sergeant being lifted up by a UFO, then pulled him inside the craft before zooming away. When his colleagues found William, he was in complete shock from what he had saw, and he was taken to the hospital. Of course, no one believed him. They were like, there's no way that he was abducted by a UFO, okay. But after researching, they did find that an unidentified object was present on their radar at the time of the abduction. Now, what happened to the abducted man? Well, 3 days later, his body was found 10 miles away. It was severely mutilated and drained of blood. Isn't that freaky? So it seems like he was literally abducted by aliens and then they killed and ate him or something. What makes this even more suspicious is that the government reports on this just suddenly vanished into thin air. Moving on to number 3, we have pilot Frederick Valentik. On October 21st, 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentik was partaking in a 125 nautical mile training flight when he disappeared into thin air. Now, it's important to note that Frederick was a very experienced pilot. So around 7:06 p.m. that night, he radioed his crew saying that an unidentified craft was following him. He described it as having 4 bright lights with a shiny metallic exterior. His final words were, "It is hovering and it's not an aircraft." Then his signal cut out. Frederick or his craft were never seen again. Now, many people believe that he was shot down or abducted by a UFO. In fact, an unidentified farmer in the area said that he saw a UFO nearly 90 feet in length hovering above his farm. He saw this during the morning of Frederick's disappearance. He then said that he also saw a plane stuck to the UFO leaking oil. Moving on to number 2, we have Terrell Copeland. In 2007, former United States Marine Terrell Copeland had his first experience with an alien. He was in his apartment when he saw an orb of light outside. He said, and I quote, "It was just a big ball of light. It wasn't moving. One was solid white. The other was directly across the street from it, up 300 feet above ground, and was changing colors very rapidly. The next thing he remembers is feeling as though something was wrong and he passed out. When he woke up, he heard someone entering his apartment. The person was moving the doorknob and scratching at the door trying to get in. He tried getting up from his bed, but he was completely paralyzed. He tried to reach for a weapon that he had, but that's when he heard a voice through the door tell him, 'You don't need that weapon. We won't harm.' When he finally was able to move, he lost 4 hours of his time. He believes that he was abducted by aliens. He said that he remembers being in a room with a woman who was definitely not human. He said, and I quote, "She had the typical black eyes you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship." That's freaky. Do any of you guys have a good alien abduction story? Let me know in the comments below. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Boy Scouts. On August 19th, 1952, a Scoutmaster and his Boy Scouts were on their way home from a retreat when they encountered a bright flash near West Palm Beach, Florida. The Scouts master originally thought it was a downed plane or a car accident, so he pulled over and got out to help. He told the Scouts to stay in the car and alert someone if he didn't return in 15 minutes. So he got out with his flashlight and an axe and went towards where he saw the bright lights. This ended up taking him to a wooded area. About 4 minutes in, he started to smell something very nauseating. Then he felt like he was being watched by somebody. The next thing he remembers is feeling heat on the top of his body. He looked up and saw a hovering, glowing object above him. He started to back away from the craft when he heard a noise like metal against metal. A hatch then opened and he saw a red flare come out towards him. The next thing he knew, he was unconscious. When he awoke, he was leaning against a tree but was completely blind. His eyes had been burned by the light. When authorities found him, he was incoherent, terrified, and freaking out. Stories like this trip me out because, like, if it wasn't an alien or a UFO, then what was it, you know?
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the military mission. This story is one that is said to have come from a Peruvian ex-commando named Juan Carlos. He is said to have quite the resume that includes being able to survive for 11 days in the jungle with only his smarts and a small knife. And while that is certainly impressive, of course we are all here today to talk about his giant snake sighting. Juan Carlos explained that at one point in time when he was on a mission deep in the Amazon with his army unit, they encountered and subsequently shot a 40-foot long snake. He went on to explain that the leaders of the unit took the remains of the snake, which he now assumed are hanging on some officer's wall somewhere, which never allowed him to have the catch verified, but this story has only fueled his fire to once again encounter a snake of that size. Juan Carlos is absolutely certain that should he go out on an expedition, that he could find another giant snake that that is over 30 feet because he says he knows where the right places to look are. In our number 9 spot today, we have the TikTok sighting. According to the TikTok account Google Maps Fun, which is an account that shares fun or interesting things they found while searching the world through Google Maps, they seem to have found some sort of giant snake off of the coast of France. The TikTok, which was posted earlier this year, shows the images from Google Maps that seems to show a gigantic snake skeleton that the user states is, quote, about 30 meters long and bigger than any snake caught before. This of course has fueled many theories that this snake could in fact be a titanoboa. The TikTok was circulated around the app and gained millions of views, and I can totally see why. It definitely would be a strange thing to suddenly come across while scouring satellite images. While everyone has been searching the Amazon, maybe the titanoboa has just been in France all along. In our number 8 spot today, we have the fisherman. This is a legend that comes from long ago, and it starts off somewhere in a rainforest in Peru. Hundreds of years ago, there was a fisherman who was from a tribe that lived near what is now the modern-day city of Pucallpa. He journeyed by canoe deep into the jungle and went off the main river path by following a little inlet that led to a hidden lake. He usually took this path as he knew the hidden lake was a great spot to catch food. As he got to his spot, things were very quiet, and he knew that that meant he was going to catch enough food for everyone. As he looked for the best place to cast his net, however, something began to stir in the water. As the fisherman looked up, he saw a great head emerge from the water right in the center of the lake. He suddenly realized that it was the head of a serpent, but not just any serpent, as the head alone was the size of the entire fisherman's body. The snake stared at him as he panicked and threw himself to shore. As he ran away as fast as possible, he turned and looked over his shoulder, only to see the snake moving toward him through the water. The fisherman was lucky enough to escape the giant serpent that day, and he returned back to the village with the story, which has lived on throughout the hundreds of years it's been since. This is why it is said that giant snakes might just be seen in any river or inlet of the Peruvian Amazon. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Borneo sighting. This giant snake sighting is said to have come from a few years ago, as there was a disaster team that was monitoring floods above the island of Borneo. The team is said to have been flying overhead in a helicopter when the sighting happened, and one member thought what they were seeing was so surprising they even snapped a picture. It is said that this gigantic snake could have been around 100 feet in length, which is absolutely insane, and the story and the photo went on to spark some concern among those who live in the area. It is said that this sighting only confirmed what locals in the area have long been worried about, which is the existence of an ancient sea serpent. Some even believe that this serpent has the ability to transform itself into different forms of animals. For me, that one might be a stretch, but who am I to say for sure? In our number 6 spot today, we have the Ranger. This is a story that is said to have come from a ranger who works near the Amazon River basin. On a day where he was patrolling around the area, he saw what he estimated to be a 45-foot long anaconda. The ranger took the people that he was telling the story to where he said he saw this gigantic snake, and they all began to try and spot it again. While they were on this search, they had a young boy with them who was from the area. As they got a little downstream from where they were initially looking, the boy showed them another spot that he explained that he and his uncle were when they saw a giant snake that came crashing through the weeds. The pair was of course extremely startled by this sighting and got out of there as soon as they possibly could. Since then, they've been on the lookout for the giant snake, but have yet to have another sighting. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Huntsman. This story starts off many years ago, and it takes place in Peru. It is said that here a local huntsman went into the jungle in search of some game to feed his family. As he was on the hunt for food, the weather began to change and suddenly the sky began to get darker. He started a fire, but upon doing so, it is said that he felt the earth begin to shake, sort of like a small earthquake. This led to him putting out the fire. The following day, he was cutting through thick areas of the forest when he struck a large ancient tree trunk that he said was about 60 meters tall and blocking his path. At the base of this trunk, however, he then noticed a deer just standing there, which is obviously odd. As the hunter began to walk towards the deer, it suddenly disappeared into the base of the trunk. This is when the hunter suddenly understood that this is no tree. The trunk is the body of a giant serpent, and at the base there is a gigantic gaping mouth that is attached to a head that has red glowing eyes and horn-like ears. The hunter slowly backed away, realizing that the earth rumbling he felt the night before was likely the serpent being startled at the lighting of the fire. He evaded death because although he mistakenly struck the giant snake, it thankfully hadn't noticed, and without the deer there, he possibly wouldn't have even realized what was really going on. The huntsman was able to make it out of there and was sure to pass the story on when he returned home. This is the story or the legend of the Sashimama, which has been around for centuries. Many believe that the tales of this creature were in fact inspired by the very real existence of the Titanoboa. In our number 4 spot today we have Percy's sighting. Percy Fawcett is a famous explorer who is best known for his search for the lost city of Z, but he is also known for his alleged Titanoboa sighting. In 1906 it is said that he was traveling through the Amazon River when he came across a gigantic snake. He didn't even only claim to see it though, he also claimed that he shot it. He said the snake was 65 feet long and that it was at least 1 foot in diameter. After his alleged shot, it is said that the snake sunk back down into the water and out of sight of the explorer. No one is quite sure of what happened to this gigantic snake after its encounter with Percy, but he is said to have had no doubts over what exactly he saw in the river that day. In our number 3 spot today we have tunnels. There were a couple of adventurers or explorers or whatever you want to call them who went to Peru in search of the Titanoboa. As part of their research, they of course spent time speaking with those local to the area so as to hear their stories of the giant snake in the hopes of maybe getting some insider info on where they could find it. They explained that one night when they camped at a village on the Samaria River, they spent an entire evening listening to these types of stories and they were absolutely astounded. One person explained seeing a 60-foot long snake that was half in the water and half out. After hearing this story, it is said that an elder from the village explained that the giant snakes use underground tunnels in order to move between lakes, which is probably the most terrifying thing I've ever heard, but this could explain why, should the Titanoboa still exist, it is rarely ever seen. In our number 2 spot today we have the duo. In 2009, a man named Mark Warner and his son Greg traveled from Northern Ireland to the Amazon basin in search of this gigantic snake that legends are made of. They were determined to capture evidence of its existence and they assembled a team and set out on a mission to prove it. They surveyed their selected areas through aerial views and set off on their adventure. After 12 days in the jungle, surviving through intense weather and taking hundreds of photos and videos, it is said that they did end up capturing a photo of what they claimed to be a huge snake, bigger than any other, measuring around 40 meters or 131 feet long and 2 meters or 6 feet wide. That is an unbelievable size. Many people of course have been a bit suspicious about these claims, but the pair are determined to head back out on another expedition to capture the creature again. It seems as though we might just have to wait again to see if the pair really can pull it off. In our number 1 spot today we have the Maine Monster. This is a snake sighting that comes from Maine and it has been confusing people ever since. Originally posted on the Facebook page of the Westbrook Police Department, they wrote, quote, "We have received a legitimate report concerning a very large snake present at the Riverbank Park. The report was the snake is as long as a truck and the head the size of a soccer ball. The snake was reportedly observed on the riverbank to the rear of the playground on both the Main Street and Brown Street side of the river." Okay. Definitely not what anyone in the neighborhood wants to hear, especially not from the police page itself, but things only went on to get more concerning. A few days later, an update was posted to the page that included a photo. This photo showed a huge shed snakeskin that looked as though it was shed quite recently. Any snake that thing belongs to has got to be too large for comfort. This went on to create quite a local legend, and rumors about what this humongous creature could be began to spread. While this may not be the largest snake on this list, the proof of its existence certainly is chilling. It is said that people even tested the skin to see what kind of snake it belonged to, and rumor has it that there was in fact some Titanoboa DNA found. Starting off in our number 10 spot we have actual trash. This one is on the less mysterious side of today's list and more on the upsetting side, to be completely honest. Humans like to leave their trash everywhere, unfortunately, and that has now seemed to reach even places humans can't really go. I'm talking about the garbage that was found at the deepest point on Earth. Director James Cameron took a venture down to the Challenger Deep, which is located in the Mariana Trench, and here he found none other than a plastic bag and candy wrappers littering the bottom. Nice to be able to make history on such a dive and also have that fun little discovery. This dive took him almost 7 miles below the ocean, which is 5 times longer than the Grand Canyon, just to put things into perspective. In our number 9 spot today we have a robot hand. On the eerily named Great Kills Park Beach in Staten Island, one autumn day a person was having a nice stroll when they stumbled upon something that had obviously washed up ashore from the ocean. This something turned out to be a lonely robot hand. There was no robot body, or any other piece found for that matter, which leaves me with one question. Has anyone seen a handless robot running around? I honestly just don't know what someone was doing with a robot near the ocean, because it seems obvious that those two things don't mix. In our number 8 spot today we have the Apollo 11 mission engines. Okay, this one isn't exactly trash, but we also aren't about to use it either. We'll call it an artifact. In 2013, off of the coast of Florida, just a casual 14,000 feet under the water, the engines from the Saturn V rocket, which was the rocket used in the Apollo 11 mission that sent Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin into space on the mission to the moon, were found after 43 years. The mission to recover these missing engines was funded by Jeff Bezos, who apparently said that the Apollo 11 mission was what fueled his passion for science and engineering. On the mission, once at an altitude of about 38 miles, the first stage of the spacecraft, including these engines, separated from the craft. The parts are then just considered lost or destroyed for forever, which is why they can be on a list of trash found in the ocean. That was until Mr. Bezos spent his money to find them. In our number 7 spot today we have a train graveyard. Okay, again, not so much trash, more of an artifact, but this list would not be interesting if I only talked about plastic bags and candy wrappers. Off the coast of New Jersey, about 90 feet under the water, archaeologists found 2 extremely rare and well-preserved steam trains that are from somewhere around the 1850s. While this is an incredible and super cool find, the question remains on how they ended up at the bottom of the ocean. There's no record of the trains either being built or lost for that matter. The best theory as to what may have happened here is that perhaps the trains were being transported by sea when a storm hit, and then maybe the crew was forced to push them overboard to prevent capsizing. I don't know a lot about boats or trains, but that sounds like a pretty reasonable explanation. In our number 6 spot today we have a giant Lego man. If you stumbled upon an 8-foot tall Lego figurine that had been washed ashore by the ocean tides, you'd probably have a couple of questions. Right? Well, what if people in the Netherlands, the UK, Florida, and Japan all had that experience? Even weirder, right? Well, a few years ago that's exactly what happened, but luckily this isn't some ominous message from some sort of scary being, but instead it was the works of an artist called Ego Leonard. The Lego figures are apparently what is referred to as, quote, his thing. Each Lego person has a shirt with the words, quote, no real than you are written on them. In our number 5 spot today we have a lot of rubber ducks. When I say a lot, I mean a lot. Like literally thousands being washed up onto the shores in Hawaii, Alaska, South America, Australia, Scotland, and sometimes not even washing ashore at all, just simply being found floating out at sea. Colloquially known as the friendly floaties, it is said that all these rubber ducks all originate back to the same shipping container, and guess what? This shipping container apparently fell overboard on its way from Hong Kong to the United States all the way back in 1998. That's way too long. This crate apparently was carrying 28,000 ducks at the time, so it's no wonder we haven't found them all yet. While this is a horrible case of plastic pollution, scientists have used this disaster to enhance their knowledge and understanding of ocean currents and plastic pollution. So I guess that's one good thing that came out of something terrible. Sometimes you have to make lemonade out of rubber ducks, or however that saying goes. In our number 4 spot today we have medicinal pills. Somewhere around 2,000 years ago there was a cargo ship that capsized just off of the coast of what is now Italy. Fast forward a bunch of years to just a few decades ago, and the wreckage of that ship was found and quickly brought up because how exciting. In the searching of the vessel, many fun and exciting things were found, like wine bottles, glass jars, and even medical equipment, but perhaps the most exciting of all of the discoveries was found in a tin vessel. These vessels were found during an x-ray of the ship, and inside the vessels they found tightly sealed medicinal tablets. It is said that after further research it was determined that these tablets were used as medicinal eye wash. I don't know, that sounds terrible. I also don't know how they figure these things out, but hey, I guess that's why it's not my job. But my job's fun because I still like to know about it. In our number 3 spot today we have an ancient fishing weir. Okay, I had to look up what a fishing weir is because I did not know, so if you're like me and don't know, a fishing weir is defined by Wikipedia as, quote, an obstruction placed in tidal waters or wholly or partially across a river to direct the passage of or trap fish. Okay, cool. It's a fish trap. So we found an ancient one of those. Nice. This thing was found in 2014 just off of the coast of a Canadian island. It is said that the underwater area where this fishing weir was found dates back to at least 13,000 years ago, which makes it the oldest known weir to man. Researchers believe that it was used by an ancient civilization living on the land to catch salmon, but over time the sea level rose, which submerged the weir too far below the surface, as well as shrunk the land quite a bit. It is so cool that one discovery leads to all of this incredible information about times past on Earth. In our number 2 spot today we have Trash Island. How can we make a whole video talking about trash found in the ocean without talking about the Trash Island itself? Trash Island is one of man's worst creations, as it quite literally is a massive human pollution just chilling in the ocean. Also known as the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which makes it sound far too glamorous for the reality of the situation, or the Pacific Trash Vortex. It basically is exactly what it sounds like, as it is a gyre of marine debris. The collection of plastic and other floating trash originates from the Pacific Rim, which includes countries in both North and South America, as well as Asia. The gyre is actually split into 2 areas, the Eastern Garbage Patch, which is between Hawaii and California, and the Western Garbage Patch, which extends from Japan to the Hawaiian Islands. I think the idea that we have to name them, and that there's more than one, might show that we are not necessarily in a great spot with the whole pollution thing. In our number 1 spot today we have a head. Don't worry, not a real human head, but honestly, still super creepy. This mannequin head washed up on the shore from the ocean for some unsuspecting person to have the fright of their life. This mannequin head is covered in gooseneck barnacles from its time spent at sea, which really adds to the eerie nature of it. This one is quite creepy and definitely would have been terrifying to find, but I think the more I look at it, the more I think it might actually be kind of beautiful in a weird way. I don't know, what do you guys think? Downright terrifying or kind of hauntingly beautiful? Let me know down below in the comments. Alright guys, that has been our little list for today. Thank you so much for checking it out. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up button if you enjoyed the video today, and don't forget to subscribe if you want to see more. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I'll see you next time. Bye!